Film is a medium that transports. All I have to do is pop myself in front of the TV to watch a movie, and I can just enjoy it, whatever place the film takes me to.
Movies have always been an escape. It gives you a whole new world to be in.
I have a rekindled love affair with movies.
Welcome, everyone, to this episode of Reel to Reel Talk. I am Sergio Barrera, and as always, I am joined by my other Reel to Reel talkers, Susan Chisholm and Paul Britton. And once again, it's time for us to get together and talk movies. We thank you so much for joining us. This week, we once again do a movie review. Netflix has released a film called I'm Thinking of Ending Things. And so today, we're going to do something unique because one of Paul's biggest loves is to talk about different directors of different styles and so forth. And Paul, I know that Charlie Kaufman is one of your favorites in terms of the work that he's put out. And so what I thought we would do is, as we get ready for this review, because I get from sort of our pre-conversation that we're all going to have a different take on this film, which is what movies are supposed to do. So, Paul, I'm going to turn it over to you. And I'm just going to sort of tell you right off the bat that this experience for me felt like it could very well have been a segment for What the Hell Did I Just Watch?
Oh,
so
absolutely.
Get us started, Paul, because I want to jump right in. This was an interesting experience.
Sure. So Charlie Kaufman is what movie geeks like me would call an auteur, who's, just he makes the movies into art. Like he has an art form that he has in mind, like a specific message that he wants to get across. So when watching I'm Thinking of Ending Things, you have to start from his filmography. Like that that's the kickoff point. Okay, so you have to have a basic understanding of his common themes. So Susan, you like Being John Malkovich. That was his very first movie. So yes. Like, what do you think of, just momentarily to go backwards a little bit, what do you think of what Charlie Kaufman, Being John Malkovich, overall theme? What's your impression there?
I mean, to me, Being John Malkovich felt like it was a It was like a look into the psyche of what is going on with individuals.
Exactly. Perfect. Yes. And so, how would you tie that to what you saw in I'm Thinking of Ending Things?
Oh. I mean, I think it was the same thing. It was kind of a look inside of what's going on inside this guy's head.
Right. And which guy is that? Who's the guy?
Jake.
And when do we how many? Okay, by the way, pausing for 1 second for the audience. Spoilers galore are coming. So do not watch this thinking you're getting a spoiler-free thing, because there's no way to talk about this movie without spoilers. So Starting right this second, spoilers galore, because I'm starting with spoilers immediately. By the way, there is something to be said for watching this before watching the movie, because you will have a different frame of mind going into it, and you might actually have a different viewing experience. So I'm not saying don't continue to watch, but if you're interested in watching the movie fresh and clean, stop. If you kind of want to see the movie but would like to hear a conversation about it first, keep listening. All right. So Jake, what incarnations of Jake do we see within the movie?
A lot of them.
Well, it spans a significant portion of his life from about, I would say, high school on. Mm-hmm. We're seeing Jake's life play out, and Jake, played by Jesse Plemons, some brilliant acting on his part, I will say. And we're seeing him from about high school age, I thought, through to, I think, the end of his life. I'll just say that. Older, much older.
Yep.
Much older gentleman. So yeah.
Yeah.
But
So-
it's a really, I think the net casts into two distinct times of his life.
Mhm.
His memories of himself as a young high school, maybe college student. I think it's more college.
It's college.
And then the end of
It's
his
like
life.
post-college.
Yeah, post-college. There you go. And then the end of his life. So
Right. And the end of his life, he is a janitor. Like, so this is somebody that if as you're watching the movie, he thinks very highly of his potential.
Mhm.
You know, he has very erudite conversations with his girlfriend, whose name we don't really actually know what her name is. Okay, so that's an important thing too, because throughout the movie, the girlfriend who is played by Jessie Buckley, and Jessie Buckley, by the way, ridiculous. Like, I need her in every single movie I've ever watched for the rest of my life. She is so good. But neither here nor there. Jake has these, very erudite conversations with her, and so we know that he has potential. We know that this is somebody who has potential, and then we also are introduced very early on in the movie is to a janitor at a high school, and I don't condone this connotation, but the negative connotation of it's just a janitor, that comes along with that. That's not somebody who we would associate with having that kind of potential. And
right.
And the reality is that, so for somebody who has potential to end up as a janitor, who and who quite frankly comes from meager beginnings, to have potential and then just end up back as a janitor, that must be pretty self-deflating.
So Paul, quick question before we continue. I'm going to cut in as needed.
Sure.
When did you realize, well, maybe that's too far ahead, but I guess my question is, I hear what you're saying about Jake, who we see full of potential, young,
right,
very well-spoken. Then, there's a point, it took me a bit to make the connection of the janitor being Jake.
Right.
And so it made the viewing of the first, at least, quarter of this film for me very confusing.
Yeah.
Because all I was taken in by was the dialogue, because we were only seeing spots of the janitor very sparsely, right?
Yeah.
So it's not a leap that most people are going to make, I don't think. Or is it just me?
It's not. You're not supposed to make that leap.
Okay.
Like, you're supposed to go through the first half of the movie and not starting to make that leap much at all. But
Okay.
Susan, like, did you make the connection at some point between the two?
Yeah, I did actually. It was kind of weird because I was like, why do we keep seeing this guy? Who is this guy? What's so special about him? And I noticed that he's never talking. I noticed and he's always watching what's going on. And I was like,
yeah,
I have an inkling.
Right.
It turned out to be right.
My first inkling, and to Sergio, to answer your question directly, that might be him. My first instance of that was when they're having the conversation in the car, and he's talking about the musicals that he's seen, and he says, and of course Oklahoma, which they feel like they have to put on, every so often. And that was like, oh, wait a second. There's no reason for Jake, the college age Jake, or, post-grad age Jake to have, seen Oklahoma multiple times,
right.
or, so that was my first, oh, wait, what's going on here? And then the second one was when his mom mentioned that it was his 50th birthday, and I was like, okay, that was actually sort of like the final nail in the coffin for me. Like, oh, okay. Yeah, that's it. How about for you, Sergio? When did you kind of make that?
It really, I would say inklings right about the same spots as I saw the parents aging, and the age, sort of run of up, back, and so forth.
Yeah.
That's when I started to really think to myself, okay, this is not about the people that we're watching in real time. Right. This is again, thinking back to the bit of Kaufman that I know, primarily being John Malkovich, because this was Psyche times 1,000.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Kaufman, I feel, because he takes this, adapts it from a novel, and I read an interview afterwards where he himself said, I only understand material when I put it in my context, like the way he sees the material in terms of adapting a film. And I got the inklings, but I don't think I really locked it down until the return drive, which was very, very, I know I'm jumping ahead, but for me, Tulsi Town is what I'm like, okay, not only is this Jake, this is Jake, okay, the janitor, and he's very unhappy with how life has gone. Like, I mean, that was for me the lockdown of, okay, all right, I get what I'm doing here. I get what I'm watching.
Yeah. So my next question, as far as things are concerned, is what are your impressions of the girlfriend? So what are your first thoughts of the girlfriend? And then how do your impressions of the girlfriend change through the movie? Susan.
I mean, at first I was like, she's clearly unhappy. And like when, and I mean, I guess throughout the film, it was like, why are you continuing to investigate this? If you're this unhappy, like you need to push forward. And like with her phone kept ringing and like kept checking in. It was like, how many phone calls? There was like something like 27 new phone calls or something like that when she checks her phone at one point. And I'm like, she's symbolizing something else. And for life, for a while there, I was like, who is this person? So
for me, there's this. So the first line of the movie is "I'm thinking of anything," and it's spoken by her.
Right.
I will say that I watched the trailer ahead of the movie, and I thought it was going to be a movie about suicide. And when you realize as the film begins and starts to the first few minutes, and she's thinking about ending this relationship, and then it's only 6 weeks, and there's still that undertone of her. She's miserable for much more reason than this relationship. And so, before sinking into what's really happening, when it's just that first 10 to 15 minutes of conversation of them in the car, I'm like, this woman is, again, in hindsight, I know better in terms of what she represents. But at the time, my impression of her was she's miserable and does not know how to get out of this relationship because she doesn't want to hurt this guy. But it isn't just this relationship that is wounding her. It's much more. And so my biggest impression of her was she's really sweet for someone who's about to deliver a death blow to a relationship at some point. I was thinking that's where we were headed, and she's just so kind. And how, and you see her waft in and out of her own mind, and then the way in which she engages him in conversation and engages the other people she encounters in the film. I was just really taken by this, is because I've seen this person, they're miserable, but they're still putting a good face on. And that's what struck me.
So to circle back to the question that you asked Sergio about Jake, at what point, Susan, did you start to realize that she's not real either, that she is not actually his girlfriend and she is just a mental projection of opportunities missed?
That I think I actually made that connection when they were still in the house, and again with the phone calls and with like the voice messages you hear, and then like the things that she's doing and how she's taking care of his parents and taking care of him while he's taking care of his parents. And it's like, this is kind of like I'm thinking of like a defense mechanism or like a protection mechanism for himself. Because again, like her name kept changing. So it was like, why would you do that? If somebody was real, they'd have a name and it would be one name, and it wouldn't be, different names throughout the entire. So that's, I think, probably in the house.
Yeah, Sergio, how about you? When did you start to be like, wait?
Listen, I have no shame to admit, I'm not even gonna say I'm embarrassed. I didn't make that decision in my head until after her conversation with Jake the janitor.
Right.
Toward the end. That was when I was like, and then the dance sequence begins. That's when it took me that long to sit there and go, oh,
no, absolutely.
Oh. Okay.
But and by the way, you're not really sure. I feel like in this movie, you're not really sure about the extent of her reality until that conversation. Like all throughout, you kind of realize, okay, because of the temporal shifts, we know that what's happening isn't really happening, but at the same time, you can believe that, okay, well, this is just sort of like an amalgama of girlfriends past or whatever. But then that conversation when she explains, how, never actually approached and never actually talked. And it's like, you realize, it becomes so much more painful in the school. It becomes so much more painful because you realize she's not even like ex-girlfriend, psychic projection. It's literally like opportunity never taken psychic projection, which is so much more painful.
Maybe I missed that then, because the conversation portion that stood out to me with the janitor was that when she calls him a creeper, that this whole entire thing was a life full, as I again was connected to Jake already in terms of what was happening in the story. This was a life full of moments in which he himself doesn't have the social couth to be able to, engage in a way that isn't creepy with women.
Exactly.
And so I didn't see it as opportunity missed. I saw it as that uncomfortable sense of that many of his relationships just weren't, they didn't see fruition because he doesn't know how to interact in a, I don't want to say normal, but in a comfortable way.
Yeah, but that's the opportunity missed, though, is that I never had the opportunity to have a real relationship with someone.
Okay. All right, I'm with you.
So it's like I never, these women would always look at me and I would always, the look I would get back was not one of, oh, there's somebody looking at me, I'm intrigued. It was always, oh, there's somebody looking at me, creeper.
Gotcha.
And honestly, anybody who has, who's been out socially as a single person has had that feeling of, oh my God, that person must think I'm a creeper. But for him, it's so overpowering that it prevents him from doing anything.
When I think back to the scenes of the in the movie that we see of Jake the janitor, he's watching. I think Susan, you might have said something to that effect. That every time we see him, he's watching something, and it doesn't feel comfortable that he's watching.
Right.
Even as he's watching TV in the break room, there's something unsettling about how he's there, if that makes sense. So yeah.
And even the movie that he's watching is like, it's just off. It's just off. It's a very weird relationship between a waitress and a guy, and the guy is basically gets her fired. It's off. There's something wrong with it. Yeah. So, as far as, Charlie Kaufman's career is concerned, this really plays in. Like, have you seen, you've seen Confessions of a Dangerous Mind, right, Sergio?
A long time ago.
Okay. Yeah. But you guys have both seen Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind?
Yes,
I have not.
Oh, you have not. Oh. Uh-oh.
Yeah, don't quiz me on Kaufman's career. I'll tell you right now.
No, okay, that's fine. But the reality is that Charlie Kaufman lives so much in his own mind, and that's just how he projects everybody else. That this movie is really the grand manifestation of everything he's ever done, all of his career put into one movie, and this one character, and it's like it almost feels like we're infringing on his thoughts.
I kept waiting for him to appear as a seriously, like this is how deep with the movies that I have seen. This is so so much him. In fact, for me, it felt, even though I knew it was a book adaptation, I was like, if he had written this book and it had been his autobiography, this would have been it. Like,
Right.
this is such a deep look into Kaufman's mind
Mm-hmm.
that you wonder, how much of this is him.
Yeah,
So.
I agree with that totally. So the title of the movie is "I'm Thinking of Ending Things," and like Susan, did you immediate like when the movie ends, the ending scene and whatnot? Did you kind of make the make a full circle connection back to the title? Like, how did that feel for you? What was that?
Sorry, my cat decided to knock something over.
Oh, okay. That's okay.
That's how I felt after the movie. So.
What?
I did. I was, in a discussion with, my husband was sitting there. He was not watching with me. I was watching it on my phone because I watched it early in the morning.
Okay.
And he had just come downstairs, and I was like, okay, so I don't know for sure whether he did or not, but like, I think, this was all about him, committing suicide. It was like, I don't know how that played out at the end, but like, to me, that's kind of how I felt about it. I was like, oh, okay.
You're thinking he did?
I think he did.
Okay.
I think he did. And like the odd, like, cartoon, pig that he's like walking with in the hallway. And I was like,
Yeah.
and he's like, it's like what the pig was saying was like, almost comforting, like, death isn't all that bad, and all this other stuff. And I was just kind of like,
yeah. And then he has his sort of awards moment where, he's speaking. Now, Sergio, you mentioned early on that with the title, you thought, okay, well, this is going to be a movie about suicide.
Yeah.
Did you not feel like that he did at the end, or was it too ambiguous? Like,
the reason I don't think he did, I think he died at the end.
Okay.
I don't think it was suicide, and here's why.
Okay.
He hasn't been able to be committal about anything
No,
throughout
true.
the entirety of his life.
Mm-hmm.
What I think happened is that's where his mind has been for a long, long time, that it's time to end things. That
I'm just thinking of ending things. Yeah.
Right. But then his own body takes over. He has that sort of not just mental breakdown that we witnessed, but his body is failing him because stress does that, right? I think his body made the decision for him, and perhaps heart attack or something of that type. I honestly think, and this is me projecting my own thoughts into it, I don't think he has the courage to end things. I think his body just did, because what we're seeing is the final break of his years and years and years of having dwelt on so much.
Yeah.
That and understanding the depth of routine that his life is in, which is enough to drive a person crazy. Yeah. And I think that he wanted to, he just never had the courage to. And what we see at the end is his body doing it for him.
So, so I'm with Susan. I do believe that he did, ultimately he did commit suicide. I think he did it at the school. I feel like that the awards acceptance speech is just sort of his suicide note. Okay. And that I love that. Just the makeup of that scene was just so great, because it's the high school production, of how they make themselves look older, just
right. Yeah.
Ridiculous, over the top lines of like, I am older, and like putting all a deep line here and a deep line here and deep line, it's I just feel like that speech is, while I hear what you're saying as far as his body did it for him, but that acceptance speech is his mind doing the final as well, in my mind. And I feel like the final shot in the movie of a picture of the car sitting in the parking lot covered in snow, I just feel like that's like, that car was there for like a whole weekend and got snowed over.
Right. Yeah, no, that makes sense.
That's what I was thinking too.
Yeah.
So I think we had a really studious conversation about I'm Thinking of Ending Things.
I agree.
That's the kind of conversation that if you take a film class in college, that's what the conversation is going to be like. So
Yeah.
I hope everybody enjoyed that. I think we've covered pretty much the full gamut of the movie. Does anybody have anything else they want to say about it before we get to kick it back to Sergio?
No. I mean, for me, it drove me to read a lot after that really helped to shape my understanding of things.
Okay.
Because I will say that when it was done, I had made the big connections of, okay, this was Jake.
Yeah.
I still wasn't 100% on the girlfriend, although I thought, okay, I think that this is just an amalgam of all those failed relationships. But it left me deeply scarred, Paul, and we'll talk about that in the ratings.
Good. No, that's okay.
So I do want to.
What?
Oh, go ahead, Susan. I'm sorry.
I didn't have anything to add.
Okay.
Your silence is speaking volumes. So, but that's the thing is, I think that this is where, I really want us to talk about how we would rate this film against our scale. If you're joining us for the first time, what we do here on Reel to Reel Talk is we have a 5 taco scale on which we rate movies. 5 tacos is the most a film can get, unless you want to throw a little bit of extra guac on top because the film was just that spectacular. So as we get into our ratings, Paul, I'd like you to go last, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Because you really, your ability to take in this film through the lens of someone who studied film, someone who understands Kaufman's work, I think that would be a good place to stop or to finish. I'll begin, Susan, if you'll go second, and then we'll go to Paul. So I know what Kaufman's done. I've read a lot about his work. I've seen some of his movies. I get that his style is totally about challenging the viewer to delve into things that are going to force you into your own psyche about yourself. This was I feel often that artists, regardless of the genre or whether it's music or painting or film, you get that point where you start to see works that are done by the artist who knows they're in the twilight of their life. And they're going to get everything out that they need to get out so that there's nothing left unsaid. To me, this is what Kaufman did with this movie. My challenge with it was 2 things majorly. Pacing. The pacing really drug out to a point where I became very frustrated watching this movie. I struggled watching the movie. I paused it on a couple of occasions to walk away and go, what am I watching? Like, I rarely do this with a film, and it's because, as you guys know, it's like, hey, what's this action movie about? Things are exploding. Awesome. Like, that's my way of looking at film. This movie was so slowly paced that it was brutal to go through for me. So that was my first big struggle with it. I appreciate everything he was doing with it in the storytelling and what he was trying to say with it. But the other thing that really hurt it was and it was particularly with the parents, Toni Collette and David Thewlis. Yeah. I felt, as impactful as their parts were, I felt like there was a waste of their talent by forcing them to such extremes in the acting that they did. It became annoying. And so I really struggled with some of the directorial decisions he made of how to portray these characters. Mm-hmm. And I get that he probably did it because you wanted to have that sort of discomfort. And so those were huge struggles for me to get through this film. It was just tough. It wasn't until the drive back that I was like, okay, I'm starting to enjoy this a little bit. But by then it was a little too late. So I struggled tremendously with this film. I really did. There were parts of it that I really was touched at the end by the acceptance speech. That was something that really was impactful for me. And then you balance it out with the amazing acting of Jessie Buckley and Jesse Plemons, which, I mean, I can't say enough about how much I enjoyed their work in the movie. it's just overall, it just didn't work overall. It just did. It was hard. It was so tough to get through. I don't mind saying that. So for me, I'm going to land, because I respect Kaufman's work, because this film reaches very deeply. I'm not going to give it less than 3. I am going to go 3 stars, or 3 stars, 3 tacos with guac.
Stars?
Yeah, exactly. 3 tacos with guac, because I cannot take anything away from what he's attempting to do here, but it was so brutally slow. Mm-hmm. And the acting was so over the top in some cases that it made it, I'm not gonna lie, it made me angry. I was like, the movie's frustrating me, not the content. Mm-hmm. The movie is frustrating me. And so yeah, that's me. 3 tacos plus guac. Susan?
I agree with a lot of the points that you made. So we've already talked about in past episodes my
dislike,
inability to I'm not a big fan of dialogue-driven movies. It's torturous for me because I'm really socially awkward. So for me to like watch other people talking and have a conversation is just like I can't handle it. I just can't. And there were points that I was like, are they done talking yet? Are they done talking yet? Is something going to happen? I wonder. What's going on? Is this entire movie going to be about them talking in the car? Because this is going to be ridiculous. So that for me was tough. I did really like the acting. They were very all like convincing with how they worded it, and like the scenery, as the scenery changed and everything like that, and you were paying attention to what's going on, and like the little blips of glimpses, that was kind of neat. But it was a little bit hard to follow if you weren't paying 100% attention, which, being how I am about the dialogue at the beginning, it was like I don't think I was able to focus as much on it as I would have been. I don't know. To me, I didn't like it. I did like, again, like what you said, like what Kaufman was trying to do. I understand that. And I understand like the message and the beauty behind it, but like it was just so, it was slow, and it was, for me, awkward to watch, and I struggled with it a lot. So I'm probably gonna say I'm gonna give it 2 tacos with guac, because again, like you said, I get what he was trying to do. Not a fan of how he did it. Mm-hmm. Yeah, the end.
And Paul, before we go to you, I'd like to make this comment, Susan, and then you tell me if maybe this makes sense. This was not a boring movie.
No.
By any stretch of the imagination. This was a difficult movie to get through, I guess. I want to make sure that yes. I established, I wasn't bored. Mm-hmm. I was just like, it's too much. Like, just, mm-hmm. Can you pull me forward? Mm-hmm. Because guys, I love dialogue-driven movies.
Right.
So for me to go, I think we've made the point. Can we move forward? So I want to make sure I'm not trying to imply that it was a boring film. It wasn't.
Right.
It just was difficult.
Right.
So, yeah.
And that's a good point that I should also say, that I wasn't necessarily bored, because, and I know, and we've talked about this in the past too, where there were dialogue driven movies where I was bored and I was falling asleep. I wasn't falling asleep, but I was like, come on, please.
It was tiring.
And awkward for me, because I felt like I was sitting there watching someone else's private conversation and I wasn't and shouldn't have been a part of, which, I mean, maybe that's just me and my like really away from people.
So Paul?
Yes. So for me, all right. So I agree with the complaints about the pacing. It's a 2 hour and 14-minute movie that probably could have been squeezed into an hour 45. Probably. Like, I think you could have gotten away with that. But here's the thing is that, like, if you recall, in our little chat, I actually said this movie's really thick, and that's the best way to describe this movie. It's a very thick movie. You are dragged through this movie. I think that's on purpose. But I also think that Charlie Kaufman can get his message across without doing that. But it's one of the things of Charlie Kaufman as a director that I appreciate more his writing. So like Charlie Kaufman, he did not direct. His first movie that he wrote was, I think, his fourth or fifth feature film was Synecdoche, New York, and his first few movies that everybody was introduced to him through, and that I love, being John Malkovich, Adaptation, Confessions of a Dangerous Mind, Eternal Sunshine of a Spotless Mind. Those movies were directed by other people, and I actually think that makes his movies way more accessible. Like Charlie Kaufman as a director is significantly less accessible than Charlie Kaufman as a writer, because I think that directors can take his material and keep it true to the original source, more or less, but while also creating a more accessible movie-going experience. I don't Synecdoche, New York is accessible at all. For as thick as this movie is, that movie is 20 times as thick, and I still love it. But that movie is just an absolute chore. I thought this one was a little better than Synecdoche, New York. But I also think that I would have loved to have seen it directed by someone else. And I love Charlie Kaufman, but I just really would have liked, I would have loved to have seen an hour and 45 version of this movie, in spite of the fact that I still love the 2 hour and 14-minute version of the movie. The Basement, I don't think that ever paid off. I felt like by the time we got into the basement and the reveal of, oh, here's his art. And so we're finding, here's yet another instance of the girlfriend is just a projection of his persona. I felt like we'd already gotten there, so like the whole basement thing, just the payoff wasn't there because we had already visited his bedroom. If we hadn't visited his bedroom, the basement becomes relevant. Like, we need one of those two. We don't need both. But I still loved it. I really did. I loved this movie. I watched it twice. I give it 4 tacos with guac. Because of the pacing, I definitely knocked off a taco for that. But I do encourage people to go watch it. It's just a great example of a movie that encourages people to have discussions about movies. And I love it for that.
Well, you did a great job of proctoring the discussion, Paul, because I was concerned, like, how much could we get from this if more than one of us had any sort of negative feelings about the film. And so I appreciate the way in which you made us, dig into what our feelings and thoughts were about more of the content than just the overall film. The film is beautifully shot. I've not seen that much dark and dark roads being used so effectively. It's just that's just one example.
His as a director, he does everything but pacing. His pacing is just, but I also think that's a reflection of his mind. Like, I feel like that's the reflection of his psyche. That's just he has so much that he deals with internally that he puts onto his films that I think it just comes across with, like, I'm just constantly thinking, I'm just constantly, and so that's what we're given exposure to.
Yeah, I will say that his pacing is still better than Terrence Malick's. So, and I love Terrence Malick's movies, but you really got to I need
you need a nap before you watch one.
Yeah, seriously. All right, well, you can definitely join in the discussion on our social media. You can find I'm Thinking of Ending Things on Netflix. And again, as always, we encourage you to watch what we talk about and weigh in with your opinions. You can find us on Facebook and Instagram. Let us know what you're thinking. Give us your thoughts. Your thoughts are always welcome, and we thank you for joining us there. Also on YouTube, make sure you have clicked the subscribe button and the notification bell so you know when our episodes land. Make sure you give our episodes a like, as that will really be encouraging and also allow you to be part of the discussion. And comment. We want to know what you think. As we conclude our discussion on this film, team, first of all, Paul, thank you for bringing that film. And I want us to all feel like we can do that because it was fun. I really enjoyed this conversation. So thank you guys. All right. Well, that brings us to an extension of what we just talked about as we get into this week's edition of What the Hell Did I Just Watch? Paul, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Cool. So I needed to close the gap in my Charlie Kaufman filmography. So we get another dose of Charlie Kaufman today. He did a stop motion animated film called Anomalisa, 2017, I think.
I think so.
Yeah. So 2015. And it was nominated for Best Animated Film. It is an absolute classic Charlie Kaufman. I mean, everything that we just talked about, throw it into here. This movie, holy shit. So like, I'm thinking of ending things is internally, it's reflective and it makes you have to really kind of think about how you feel. Anomalisa basically is like, if you don't have depression, you will by the end of this movie. Here, this is what it's like. This is depression. This is clinical depression, and this is also clinical. What's the one where people can't relate to other people? The personality something. There's a thing where like basically everybody else is the same person, and that's what this movie is, like literally. So the thing about this movie is that you have one you have the main character who's Michael Stone is his name, and he voiced by David Thewlis, who we just discussed in the prior movie, and then just about everybody else in the movie is voiced by Tom Noonan. There's only one other actor. We are introduced to Lisa Hesselman, who is voiced by Jennifer Jason Leigh about halfway through the movie. And that's Jennifer Jason Leigh's the only other voice other than Tom Noonan and David Thewlis that we hear throughout the movie. And not only does everybody have the same voice, they also all have the same face. And the way the stop motion works is that there's a line right here and then a line right here on all the characters' faces. And so like their nose, mouth, and jaw, everybody's the same. Everybody has different hair and different eyes, but just this bottom of the face, everything that, is expressive as far as, voice expression, this Michael Stone just hears the same thing over and over again from everybody. His wife, his son, the hotel manager. It's constantly a barrage of monotony coming in on this person, and it is crippling monotony. I mean, you hear Peter Noonan, or not Peter Noonan, Tom Noonan. You hear I thought got Peter Noonan in my head. Anyway, you hear Tom Noonan's voice, and you succumb to the weight of Tom Noonan's voice by the end and understand how horrible it is to be Michael Stone. And then the freshness of hearing somebody else and seeing somebody else that doesn't have that facial characteristic. And you understand his excitement because he gets so excited when he finally hears somebody else's voice. But then you watch his interaction with that person as he starts picking her apart. And at one point, as in the middle of picking her apart, he begs her, please don't leave me. I lose everybody. And, spoiler alert, by the end, he loses her and we get Tom Noonan again. And it's just like, it's so, it is just such a debilitating movie, but in every awesome way that any positive connotations you can make with being emotionally debilitated by a movie, that's what this movie does. It is so good. But I could not ever recommend it to anybody. Like, there's just no way I could ever tell somebody, you have to watch this movie. It's great. Like, unless I know for a fact that it would not send them into a horrible downward spiral and ruin their entire week. Like, that's because this movie has that kind of power to do that.
I have 2 extra days off this week. I don't think I'm going to watch that. So
don't. But I mean, it very much is a what the hell did I just watch, because it's like, oh my God, what the hell is going on with this guy? How is it? And you just, it's just the burden of being him. You know, and in the end, that's what it ends up being. Is the movie is about the burden of being Michael Stone, and it's like, oh, unfortunate.
All right.
Yes. Yeah. It was an experience.
It's been a Kaufman-esque experience here today.
Yes.
As we encourage you to listen to Paul and don't dive into Anomalisa right away. So
right. Be in the right headspace. Just be ready.
Is there a headspace for Kaufman? Because goodness gracious, I fear being in that headspace too long. So
yeah,
but
there is. It's just it's a tough headspace.
Yeah. And that's the mark of an artist is you know when they challenge you, that's when you know that they're serious about their work. And so
and again, and I it's something I already said. I'm going to reiterate it. I highly encourage everybody to watch the movies that he's made where other people have directed it, because they're not that crippling. It's that you get the effect without feeling emotionally pummeled.
Yeah.
Charlie Kaufman as a director wants to pummel you, and he does. which is fine. But I would love to see just Charlie Kaufman and Pete Jones make movies for the rest of their lives. Like if the two of them could just, because they did Adaptation and Being John Malkovich together, and it's just like that was the perfect pairing.
Yeah. Fantastic. Well, Paul, thank you as always for your segment. We encourage you to watch the things that Paul's talked about. Pay attention to our social media, because he'll often share the movies that he's discussed in the What the Hell Did I Just Watch segment. So with that, we will move into this week's edition of Susan Finally Saw. Susan, I'm excited because I have no idea what you're going to talk about.
For a change.
Yeah.
Well.
I know you too.
No.
Last night I was seriously sitting there staring at my screen on Netflix and just like clicking and clicking and clicking and clicking and clicking and clicking. And then my youngest son pops in the room and says, "Oh, we should watch this one." So we watched a movie from 1993, which I don't know why I watched this movie. Anyway, we watched Dennis the Menace with Walter
I'll be right
Matthau.
back. I'll come back in a couple minutes when you're done talking, so we can actually have a conversation about stuff.
Yeah. Anyway, it was
with your child. So
it was with my child. I loved him very much, and I promise I didn't punish him at all for any of that. Get back in your cage. No, I'm just kidding. It was a cute movie with Christopher Lloyd played a really awesome bad guy, and I loved it so much because it was the typical like bumbling bad guy, and Walter Matthau as the cranky old neighbor man who never is. He's always angry at the kid and ends up, he yells at the kid because at Dennis, I should say. The kid's name is Dennis. He yells at Dennis because he distracts him from something that was really important to him. And so Dennis runs off and gets picked up by the bad guy that's been like going through the town and thieving. And basically through, him being himself, he virtually destroys the bad guy. He ruins his spirit, and he, saves the day, of course. And, it was not a movie that I would have chosen on my own. Nor is it a movie that I would necessarily recommend to anybody who is over the age of like 10.
Two. Paul.
I mean, yeah, 8. We'll go 8. It's somewhere in the middle there, but yeah, it's I survived.
This movie represents the betrayal of my childhood because it was written by John Hughes, and who wrote some of the most impactful movies of my, years from like 10 on, Ferris Bueller's Day Off,
Right.
Breakfast Club, even Home Alone. But there's no excuse for this movie.
Where does it rank in your mind, Paul, against the first Child's Play?
I've never seen the first Child's Play. Like, I don't keep in mind, I'm not
Susan,
a horror
have you?
movie. I'm not a horror movie person, so like, I don't give it like that like Chucky, fuck you, I don't care. But
Oh wait,
it looks
no,
like,
wait.
It
Hold
looks
on.
like what?
Hold on. I'm an idiot. I'm giving you the wrong title. Hold on.
Oh, you're thinking of the horrible one with what's his face, John Ritter.
Yes. Why
yeah.
did I say Child's Play? What is that called?
Oh, okay.
I was like, that's not even a comparison. Although we will give you Child's Play sometime soon.
Hey, you got to take what you can get.
Right. The movie that I'm thinking of is Problem Child.
Problem Child, yeah.
Problem
Child's better. Look, Problem Child is so much better, and it's not good.
Right.
So, like,
No, I mean that's the best way. It's not good, but it's still better than this was. Like, but truthfully,
you need to make Cameron watch it.
He did. He watched it with me.
No, Problem Child.
Problem Child.
Oh,
yeah.
Oh.
No, don't. Because that means that she has to watch it too.
Yeah.
It will.
Yeah, there was a sequel to Problem Child. That's what I don't get.
Yeah.
But whatever.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
I mean, yeah. F- for not only picking something that's not on your list, but for picking something that's garbage that's not on your list.
Okay, here, let me go get my 10-year-old son. And I'll put your butt in his ear, and you can tell him he gets an F- for choosing
You
this
have to be
movie.
responsible for your decisions, and your decision was to let a 10-year-old pick the Susan Finally Saw movie that's not on her list, that nobody would ever suggest that she should finally see. The whole point of the thing is, hey, I finally saw a movie that people suggest I should see, not, hey, I finally saw a movie that nobody should have ever seen ever.
I finally saw a movie.
This did start out as she doesn't watch movies very often, so
it's
interesting choice.
I watched.
If those are the kind of
movies
movies if those are the kind of movies you watch, I don't blame you for not watching movies very often because you think, all movies must suck if this is what I'm going to have to watch.
I'm gonna quit. Done.
I'm excited that I get to find this movie poster and put it on the show. So
So proud.
How did we ever get to Dennis the Menace on Real to Real Talk? It only took 44 episodes, so but there it is. So all right, I think that's how many we have. But anyway, all right, Susan. Well, thank you so much for your time this week. We always look forward to Susan Finally Saw week to week, and this one really threw us for a loop. So thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. Well, I will take a moment to do a little thing we call real-time rewind here on the show, and it is simply a moment when I get a chance to remind you of certain films that are out there that you may have forgotten about or that maybe you haven't seen. And so this week, I would like to talk about a little movie called Ocean's 11. Not the older version with Dean Martin and Frank Sinatra, the Rat Pack, but the updated version that starred George Clooney, Brad Pitt, and so many others. Ocean's 11 began a series of movies that I really thought were going to get worse as they went on, but for myself, I found that 12 and 13 were just as entertaining and just as fun because the director, of course, was consistent throughout. And as I do, I forget names very quickly. Steven
Soderbergh?
Thank you, Soderbergh, as the writer and director of all three of these films. Fantastic. Thank you, Paul. And it's just very clever. It's one of these movies, again, that I can watch over and over, Ocean's 11, because of the work that's done by all of the cast. Andy Garcia is fantastic, and his character develops beautifully throughout the series. No, I just don't think enough people have seen it. So if you haven't caught Ocean's 11, I encourage you greatly to do so. It's a nice, comfortable ride. It's a lot of fun. And so that is this week's Real-Time Rewind. Go make sure you watch Ocean's 11, 12, and 13 as well.
And 8. I do want to snowball on top of you. 8 was totally ignored, and it shouldn't have been. It's really good.
Okay. I'm not giving it a chance, I'll be honest. So
it's really good.
I will take that into consideration.
You should.
All right.
I would not lead you astray.
That's true. This is true. This is true. I'm thinking of ending things.
Oh, no.
Wow.
You had full warning. I absolutely told you guys, I don't know if this is something we want to do. And you were like, all right, let's do it. All right. Sorry.
Yeah, no, I couldn't resist. Throughout the episode, you have noticed that we have all been drinking from the now official Real to Real Talk mustache cups. And so I raise a toast to the two of you and all three of us for the work we do here. It's a whole lot of fun. And thank you, Susan, for your thoughtful gift. All right. We're going to take a moment to remind you that if you are watching us on YouTube, we thank you and we ask that you please subscribe and hit that notification bell so that you know when our shows are landing. Also, give us a like and let us know in the comments what you think, as we are very curious to know how you feel about what we're doing. Also, make sure you're following us on Facebook and on Instagram, where you can find out what we're watching, what's coming up, and where you can also leave us comments to let us know what you'd like us to talk about and what you'd like us to watch in the future. So we thank you for doing that. All right, so now it's time for us to do our weekly installment of Real Quick Reviews, and I'm curious to know who's got a movie for us this week.
I have one.
All right. Is it
Because
Kaufman?
we've talked about, no, it's not a Charlie Kaufman movie, because we've been talking about feel-good movies all episode, with the Charlie Kaufman. I have another feel-good movie. It's called The Devil All the Time.
I'm so looking forward to watching that today.
And I'm glad that you waited until after our podcast, after I literally said, hey, guys, let's do The Devil All the Time for our real quick review. Excellent timing.
Time.
Okay. Holy shit. I want to say that first, I'm going to give this is one that I want to give the rating first up front.
Okay.
Extremely solid, heartfelt for tacos. Like
Okay.
I am hard pressed for a reason to not give it 5 other than it literally just sucked the soul out of me after the day before I had already watched Anomalisa.
This was you saying you need a cake and a hug.
Yes.
That's
so
right.
I finished watching the movie and, so early on Wednesday, I sent the thing saying, hey, I found something for a real quick review. And then Sergio was like, hey, you must be reading minds and blah, blah, blah. And so that night I watched Anomalisa and then the next day I watched The Devil All the Time. And that's when I texted, I need cake and a hug, because just have somebody nearby that's not watching the movie ready with a hug for you at the end of the movie. And have cake or cookies or whatever your comfort food is, have it ready to go, because you're going to need it.
Wow.
This movie is just an absolute gut punch the entire time. Like, it's just like, here, you think that sucks? Watch this. Boom. Oh, you think that sucks? Watch this. Boom. Oh, no, you that made you feel like shit. How about this? Boom. It's just glorious, and it's so well made, and it is so good, but it is just like an absolute fucking nightmare of a movie to watch, but it's so good.
Okay.
Oh my God. And it has a happy ending. Or I'm going to do this. It has a happy ending. So unfortunately I can't have any more of a conversation because I don't want to spoil it for you, Sergio, but
Well, yeah, and I'm listening to you, and as you're talking, I'm looking up a film because the last time I felt that a film did this, it was a Philip Seymour Hoffman movie. Give me just a moment, because literally how you described it, Paul, has me excited because I watched the trailer.
Mm-hmm.
And I watched the trailer with my wife in the room, and she looked at me and she's like, I don't know. And I was like, I do. Like, so
Yep.
I think I'm going to watch this one on my own if I know her.
It's like,
I think I do.
While you're looking that up, I will tell you, it's like wrestler level kick in the stomach. You know, it definitely takes a page out of Aronofsky's playbook of, I am just going to make people's lives miserable, and not just on screen, but the viewer as well. And,
the movie is Before the Devil Knows You're Dead.
Oh, interesting.
Was the last time I felt that was it was a movie that was gut punch after gut punch after gut punch. So
okay,
it literally popped to my head as you were describing, the devil all the time. So
yeah. It's so good. I can't possibly recommend this movie more, where I would not recommend Anomalisa to anybody. I recommend this to everybody because it is way more accessible, and it does have the quote unquote happy ending. It's not going to be a happy ending in the sense of, oh, I feel good and like, okay, well, at least, you know, it's not like that, but it's like, well, all right, I don't feel like somebody's now standing on my throat and, you know, has a baseball bat ready to hit me in the head. It's, you know, there is some release to the tension. Let's put it that. So yeah,
and if I'm not mistaken, it's on Netflix. There you go.
Yeah, it's free on Netflix. Check it out. Tom Holland, Robert Pattinson, the acting from those two is just crazy good. So insane. Tom Holland. Wow. Tom Holland. Spider-Man.
Well, and future Batman continues to impress, apparently. So good. Indeed. All right. Well, Netflix, The Devil All the Time. That is I don't think we need any other real quick reviews, because now I want time to go see the movie. To go see that movie. All right. Well, I think that that's pretty much it, unless I'm mistaken. So.
Yeah, I'm gonna go cry now. So
I was gonna say, what an episode this has been. I mean, all kinds of things.
Watch Paul divulge his emotional baggage all on.
I think it's time for you to go watch. It's time for you to go watch Problem Child. So.
You mean Child's Play?
Yeah. As always, we thank you for joining us here at Real to Real Talk. We have now been on YouTube for quite a while. It just goes so quickly. We're approaching 10 episodes pretty quickly here. And I have enjoyed so much.
We have a reveal. Are we gonna do that?
We do. Yeah, we do. Because you're gonna have to come back next week, because it is time once again for our Netflix roulette. Brought to you by our friends at Susan. I feel like I need to make you do this, since this was your find.
Yeah.
Realgood.com.
Indeed. Realgood.com. Check them out. Make sure you say hello. Go like their stuff. Susan, I think it's your turn. You're going to give us a genre, and we're going to put it into the Real Good app for Netflix Roulette, and we're going to find out what we're going to watch. So you'll have to tune back in. So, Susan, I've been waiting on pins and needles to figure out what you're going to give us.
So I toyed with the idea of selecting romantic comedy.
Is that
I
even an
decided
option
against it.
Okay.
Yes, it is.
Okay.
I'm going to go with drama, because we're not depressed enough yet.
Yeah, I was going to say. So drama is going to be the category for next week. So when you tune back in next week, folks, you will figure out what the wheel gave us, and you'll listen to us talk about movies once again. So Susan, Paul, as always, thank you for your work that you do and for making this so much fun.
Thank you.
With no words. Okay, cool.
We're speechless.
I'm trying. My phone just froze up. I was going to do a real-time spin of the wheel, but
Well,
My
is it
stupid.
still
I'm not
frozen?
gonna lie. I definitely spun the wheel last night and was very excited about my choice because it's a movie that I've wanted to watch.
Oh, okay.
Oh,
That's good.
excellent. Yeah.
Have you spun yet, Paul?
I'm
I don't mind
right
if we
now.
spin. We just can't share until it's
Okay. I got Pride and Prejudice, which I've seen only about 7 billion times, so I'm gonna have to
Okay.
spin again.
If you get something different and that you're going to go with, don't call it out just
I
yet.
got it.
All right.
Okay.
And I
Interesting.
am going to. We'll see y'all next week. Have a great. Thank you so much for watching. And look forward to next week when we do Netflix Roulette once again. All right. Don't forget, we always say you're awesome, you're amazing, and the world's a better place because you are in it. We'll see you next time on Real to Real Talk.